it takes a lot of courage for somebody to be able to either say out loud, I need it different, or B, to go and just think, I'm not going to make a fuss. I'll just go and get quietly the ones I know that I need, because who knows their body better? No one. You know your own body. That takes so much courage to do that. And then to have a trainer not say once, but twice, no, have those ones, you'll be fine. That's not what fitness is about.
Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of Talk Your Abs Off. I'm your host, Abby Clapper, and today we're having a really great conversation around one of my special interests, which is working with people who are neurodivergent, someone who maybe has ADHD, autism, anything else that's on the spectrum. And today I'm joined by Rhiannon Cooper, all the way from the UK. Hi, Rhiannon. How are you?
Hello, I'm good. Thanks. How are you?
I'm great. Thank you. Now, for everybody who is listening, Rhiannon is a late diagnosed autistic ADHDer and qualified personal trainer. Based at JD Gyms in Wolverhampton and founder of Not So Typical Fitness, Rhiannon specializes in neuroinclusive training for neurodivergent clients and people who've been excluded by traditional gym culture. She's also a UK size 20 strong woman competitor preparing for her first competition in 2026, which is so exciting, proving that fitness isn't about becoming smaller. Her approach as a PT was the focal point of a Joe Fazer YouTube video with over 1.3 million views in a month, as well as local radio and national newspapers, including The Sun, and also recently on the national television. And Rhiannon's mission is to make fitness accessible and to help people find strength in who they are. That's quite a lot, Rhiannon.
Yeah, when you hear it like that, when someone else says it, it's like, oh gosh, that is a lot. So,
it is a lot, but it's wonderful.
Yeah. Thanks.
I love it. I love it. Now, you also were, so we actually connected over Instagram. I last year became certified as an autism exercise specialist, and somehow you saw that in the big, the interwebs, and and we connected, and I'm so excited to be talking to a trainer who also specializes in neurodivergence, because I think it's really important and also underrepresented as well in the fitness space.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that the fitness space is an intimidating place to exist in, regardless of any neurodivergence. So for anybody joining a gym, it's quite intimidating and overwhelming at first.
100%.
Yeah, it's like when you're trying to work within an environment that is that stressful, then when you add that extra kind of layer or complication of neurodivergence in there, I think it's so important to have people who are specialized or have this awareness and can be adapt what is a quite scary place to something that actually can feel okay. Because that's how we get people in the gym and moving their body and feeling safe. So yeah,
completely agree. And you have an insider's peek into that world, because you are a trainer specializing in working with people who are neurodivergent, and you're actually neurodivergent yourself. So you have kind of an upper hand in what that looks like. Can you explain? So I know it's pronounced a bunch of different ways. I usually say it ADHD. And if people have seen that phrase, I know a lot of my listeners probably haven't, but can you explain ADHD or ADHD to someone who might be unfamiliar?
Yeah, so I'm actually going to throw a curveball here as well, because I don't like it called that. But I think
really?
like both of those ways of saying it, seeing it written like that, I'm not a huge fan, because my brain doesn't really process it as a thing.
Yeah.
So I like to describe myself as an autistic ADHDer.
I like it.
So I like that more. But I think in terms of whether you say ADHD or AUDHD or however you want to say it, it's where you have both autism and ADHD. And because there's a lot of comorbidities and they cross over a lot in how they will present in somebody, they are often kind of found co-occurring, and quite a few people will have both. Not everyone, I will say, but the hard thing about being an autistic ADHD for me is my autism and my ADHD are like in a constant 100% of the time battle with each other in my mind. And I might be able to go and do something that kind of pleases the autistic side of my brain, and I might be able to do it just for a little bit, like not a hyper fixation, more of a structured thing. Let's look at the gym, right? So following a plan. and that's good for my autistic brain. I like to turn up and I have my plan and I follow my plan. I do it 4 times a week. I know what I'm doing. I feel good in it. I'm progressing. It's great. But the ADHD part of me is like, I am really bored now of this. And then it's like, well, what now? Because my autism is like, no, 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 we must do this plan because you have a competition and this plan is going to get you to that competition. And my ADHD is like, oh, no, I'd rather do something else. And it is just this battle of like, it is almost like having 2 little people on your shoulders, not kind of an angel and a demon, but having kind of the autism and the ADHD, and they're both bickering. And I just stand there and freeze because actually, well, I can't listen to either of them because they're both chattering at the same time. And that's what it's like every single day.
Yeah, I think that's a
So,
really
yeah.
interesting take on it, because a lot of times someone will have one or the other, and you can plan differently for both. Like a lot of times with ADHD, you need a lot of change, a lot of nuance, a lot of novelty things to make it fun and interesting. But on the other hand, the autism piece does need a lot of routine. It needs the similar things. Having a plan to follow, like you said, is very important. And so trying to find a way to kind of mix those together, I definitely think it's possible, but it does make it very complicated, especially when you're working on it for yourself, right? Now, I'm sure when you're working with other clients, it's a lot easier because you can come in like from an outsider perspective, like from the outside in,
Mm-hmm.
and make a plan. But when you're looking at it for yourself, I can imagine it's probably pretty complicated.
Yeah, well, I actually have a coach. I can't do my own coaching and kind of programming.
Yeah.
It's even if it wasn't, so before I started training for the strong woman things, I was trying to do my own coaching plan, couldn't do it. It's like it's not a real thing if I do it myself. That's sort of how it feels.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's hard for myself, and I think that's the same through kind of running your own business as well. It's really hard when you've got this autism ADHD brain because I want to do all the things right now. But of course, they're not in the plan of how you grow a business. So it kind of comes across in every aspect of life.
Yeah.
But what it does enable me to do, I think, is when it comes to other people, I have that. It is not sympathy, but I understand what it is like for people sometimes who have autism or ADHD or both, or might just be anxious and nervous and probably neurodivergent, but haven't got a diagnosis and might not even have considered it. Just people who are different.
Yeah.
And I love helping people. And you see that kind of change that someone goes through when they build that confidence and they learn how to do something. And that is what I love. And I think when it comes to running a session, for me, the autism and ADHD, they go quiet and I'm just in my element and I love it and it's great.
Yeah.
And it's probably one of the first times ever that actually happens. And I can just enjoy being in that moment.
That's fantastic, and that's when you know that you're really in the right space. And I love talking about this. And I've never been diagnosed with anything ADHD, autism. I work with a lot of clients who have autism and ADHD, and they will tell me, Abby, you're neurodivergent. You just don't know it. And I think it's so funny. I think, I do see some like ADHD tendencies in, in certain things, and, needing novelty in workouts, and just in life too. As same as a business owner, it can be really difficult to try and work like on a specific plan, but you have all these ideas, like you said.
Mm-hmm.
But I think too, just being able to recognize someone whose brain just works a little bit different, and being able to help them, because the neurotypical way of exercise, it works for them, but it's not going to work for everyone. And I think that's just having someone to be comfortable in the gym is such a hard thing. I mean, I grew up in exercise. I grew up doing all these sports, but I was still really uncomfortable in the gym. I didn't know how to lift properly, and I didn't have people around me to support me in that. And so by the time I got to college and was figuring it out myself and with my professors and my classmates, and we were able to do that, that was a really special time. But not everyone has that opportunity. So having someone who is empathetic, I do think working in the neurodivergent space requires a lot of empathy and care, which some trainers are like boot camp trainers, and they, are like the military, and they are not nice to people.
Mm-hmm. No pain, no gain.
Exactly. But what was your experience with exercise growing up? How was it for you?
Very different. So in the UK, we have PE at school, so physical education. I hated it.
Mhm.
I was never sporty, but I always had a horse. So my kind of special interest, especially as a child, was horses. That was my
I love
thing.
that. Yeah.
And so I was late diagnosed, I'll just point out as well, when I was 30, so only 3 years ago. And my horse love died with my horse. When I got a pony when I was 11 after begging my parents for a very long time. I got the pony and I kept the pony for her entire life. So I lost her, I think about 7 years ago now. And my love went with that pony. And it might come back. I'm open to it. It might come back. And I tried to have another horse after, didn't really vibe. And that could be that it wasn't the one for me. Regardless of that, when it came to exercise, horse riding was my happy place. That was what I loved. He at school was horrible because kids aren't nice if you're different.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm different. I just didn't know why. Just thought it was a bit I was the quirky kid. That I think is very usually what people say if they're late diagnosed. I was the quirky kid. But what happened is I was walking with my wife in some woods and she was breathless and I was not. And we had this conversation and I remember thinking, feeling quite smug because I was like, well, you're out of breath and I'm not, and I'm bigger than you, therefore I'm fitter. And I had this this is good, isn't it? This is a good life, fat and fit, and it was all good. But then I sort of thought about this and I actually couldn't remember the last time I was out of breath. So at 30 years old, couldn't remember the last time I was out of breath, probably meant that it was when I was at school doing those PE lessons, or when we used to do the cross country once a year, which I used to try and avoid like the plague. And actually, I had mental health disorders or challenges. I have depression. I've been diagnosed with depression for a very long time. I'm quite strong medication for that. And anxiety, which are most likely because I grew up undiagnosed and had to deal with what life looked like when you're undiagnosed. But the reason that's important is because I never wanted to end my life. I wanted to live a long, happy, healthy life. And I had this realization that if my heart isn't pumping harder, my lungs aren't working harder, I'm not going to have that, or I'm not going to set myself up the best opportunity to do that. And so I knew something had to change, and I was morbidly obese. I was about 60 pounds heavier than I am today. So I joined a gym, and that joining a gym was one of the most terrifying things I've ever done. The second was the Joe Phaser video. But I went because I needed to, or I was ready to start prioritizing my health in a way that worked for me. And it was never about weight loss. It was never about dropping clothes sizes or seeing a number on scales go down. I wanted to feel stronger in my body. That was always the main goal. Weight loss happens because, of course, weight loss does happen if you start to work your body and eat more balanced. And I did. And I lost 100 pounds in 18 months, which was just from the gym and nutrition. And as I say, I'm 60 pounds lighter. I'm about 50 pounds heavier than I was at my lightest. So I'm kind of in the middle, because actually weight loss didn't make me happy. And that was never the goal. Yeah. And so I exist in this body now, and I feel the happiest and strongest I've ever felt. And I think it's because I made my fitness journey about me and what I needed. And that kind of journey of discovery of who I am actually with that diagnosis meant that I could take a more informed look at what motivated me and what didn't. And there are many, lots of reasons why my journey, I lost weight and I put weight back on and now I'm losing it again. And I don't think weight is a good metric for me to measure. It's how I feel and it's my happiness and all of those things. So that's a run through of my fitness journey, because it's all really in the last 3 years. And I would have probably burst out laughing if you'd told me at the very beginning that in 3 or 4 years' time I'd be a qualified personal trainer helping people like me. I would have laughed, or I just would have thought you were a crazy person and walked away, because I didn't enjoy it. I didn't like exercise. Exercise was horrible. And even when I was in the gym the first 6 months, I hated. It was not nice. And I think this is why I actually then, when I learned how to enjoy it, but it was the realization that exercise doesn't have to be something to hate and be afraid of. And once I learned that, everything changed. So yeah, the journey is very short in a way, but is just all of my years of not wanting to exercise actually coming to a head and being able to understand why.
And I think you're not alone in that experience either, because there were so many kids that I grew up with who really hated PE class, right? Who would try
Yeah.
to, fake sick on the days when we were doing, running the mile, or, I hated playing dodgeball because it just wasn't fun and it was scary to me. And, I think there's a lot of people who were in that boat and who didn't find fitness maybe until later, or until it was explained in a way that made sense for their brains, right? Because there are a lot of us who do exercise because we enjoy it, but also not everyone enjoys it. And I want to get in a little bit too, because you said when you walked into the gym for your first 6 months, you absolutely hated it. And I think that's because the common fitness spaces and common gyms are not made to be neurodivergent friendly. They are very overstimulating places. And I want to talk a little bit about what some of the different sensory needs that someone who's neurodivergent might need when they work out, and how we can help when people are feeling that way and go into a gym. How can we adapt those things to them to make it a positive experience?
Yeah, so I think that I fully agree gyms are not sensory friendly spaces
No, they're not.
for many reasons. But what I'm going to say might be slightly surprising. So for me, it wasn't this sensory overwhelm in the way that you might expect it was, but not in a noise way, a lights way, a smells way. For me, so I joined the gym and I did about 6 months. All I would do is cardio. I'd go on the treadmill, safe. We all know that it's a good way to start, actually, is just pick a piece of cardio. It feels safe and you can build your comfort zone up very slowly. And I did that. I'd sit in the car afterwards and speak to my partner or my mum, and they'd be like, but do you not feel good now you've done it? No, I hate it still. I walk out, I don't feel the endorphins. I don't feel good. I just feel more overwhelmed. And this is not fun. One day I was on that treadmill doing my walk, and I used to download an episode of The Office, your version, the American version.
Love it.
I used to download an episode and I'd watch one or two, and that would be how I kept my focus because of the ADHD, not wanting to be there, but I could do that.
Mm-hmm.
One day I'm on my treadmill and someone's running on a treadmill next to me. And I remember very clearly, it's like a light bulb moment. I looked at them and they were panting. They were so breathless and they were sweating everywhere. It was kind of gross, but they were running and they were good. They were enjoying it. And I looked at them and they were slim. And I was like, why is this person not stopping? Because look at how are they running still? They look so uncomfortable in everything that's going on. And it was suddenly this realization that actually I never hated exercise. What I hated is feeling out of control of my body. And I feel out of control when my heart is pounding in my chest and when sweat's pouring out of my skin and when I'm breathless, gasping and feel like I can't catch my breath. That feels like danger to me.
Mm-hmm.
And I had never considered that. And I think this, for me, is why this diagnosis has been so life-changing, because I could understand. I've been learning about what makes me feel overwhelmed and things like interoception and how to listen to body signals. And I just realized that I was actively avoiding being out of breath because it didn't feel safe in my own body. And that moment changed everything, because it was like I could tell myself it's okay to be breathless. It's okay to be sweaty. It's okay to be like feeling your heart. Like, that's okay. It's not something that is dangerous. Actually, what is dangerous is it not doing those things. So it changed everything. So when it comes to this like sensory overwhelm, my experience, and now I'm working in a gym, I do get the more typical kind of sensory overwhelm things like the noise and smells and lights. But back then I was heavily masking all the time. I was very recently diagnosed, but it was this internal overwhelm and sensory feeling of almost like losing myself because my body was going to stop because I couldn't do the things that felt uncomfortable.
Yeah.
So, yeah, does that make sense?
It does. And that's very interesting. I've actually never thought of it that way because, when I think about a lot of my clients, I go to my clients' homes because that's where they feel the most comfortable. So we avoid a lot of times we avoid the gym altogether because of things like you said, because of the lights, the fans, the smells, the sounds. Like there's a lot happening. But I think it does make a lot of sense that the feeling of your body. I mean, I even know someone who told me one time the feeling of when they get sweaty, how their shirt sits on their body, they hate it, right? So it's really different for everyone.
Off their skin, it's horrible.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
exactly. Yeah. So I think that's another really great perspective that someone might not be able to explain until, now that you've mentioned that might maybe click for someone like, oh, that actually makes so much sense. But then also understanding you're still safe in your body, you're still safe doing what you're doing, and it is good. It is a good thing. And you can kind of pace yourself too, right? If you don't like all the breathing heavy, the beating heart, like that's why we work up to things, right? That's why we slowly increase intensity and why we aren't sprinting like the person next to you straight out the gate, because that would be crazy.
Yeah, and there are different ways of getting cardio in, aren't there? Even if it wasn't like, say, jogging versus sprinting. I love now, I'm not a runner, I don't run. Me and going quick, I really struggle with quick movements. It's just, I think I get so in my head about the movement that I can't do quick. But I love feeling strong. So I love doing like a sled push. Now, if you do a sled push, like that is cardio, because at the end of
Oh,
it,
yeah.
you are like as breathless as you probably can get. If it's heavy enough, you will be feeling like you're dying.
Yeah.
And for me, like that's fun. And so it's, yeah, being able to reframe things like, so it's strength work, but it's cardio for me. But if somebody said, right, go and run on a treadmill for 10 minutes, I wouldn't want to do it. And that's 10 minutes. If somebody said, we're going to do like, I don't know, 100 meters sled push for 4 times. Yeah, let's do it. That sounds fun. Let's have a little rest in between. But that is the whole premise, I guess, of why it's so important to have people who do have kind of that awareness of how people need things differently, because there's nothing inherently wrong with needing it to be different.
Exactly. And also like that's what's so great about someone having that awareness around how to help someone who's neurodivergent, and having an open mind, right? Because there are a lot of trainers who are going to have their way of doing things. Like, we need to do these specific exercises and we don't deviate to see results.
Yeah.
Well, like I have clients who, if they maybe in their body it doesn't feel good to do a deadlift, great. We have 5 other hamstring and glute exercises that we can do that you're going to feel so much more confident doing. And that's I think the ultimate part of it that you've talked about earlier is we want everyone to feel confident in their movements, in their bodies. We don't want to make someone feel uncomfortable. And I think that's something that trainers really need to grasp, is that if someone's really not feeling something, we need to be able to pivot. Like, it's something that we just have to be able to do and be willing to do.
Yeah. Because it can truly make the difference to somebody staying and continuing a fitness journey or never coming back.
Exactly. 100%.
Yeah, I've seen it. So where I work is a chain gym, and I'm not going to name names, but there are people, we have certain exercise classes. So we will run the same named class, but run it in our own way. And so the way I do one class a week, because I find running a class very overwhelming as a trainer. So I only do one a week, and it's a very quiet time on a weekend, which is all intentional, because then what I get is the beginners who will come to my class because it's safe and small, the music's not as loud. But I remember going into someone else's class who was running it, this is as a member quite a while ago, and somebody tried to get 2 different weights from the weights we were kind of told to grab. So this is pre me even starting to qualify and study. So I have a weird memory where I can remember a lot of things and experiences, which is great because it means I do things differently. So the person tried to grab 2 lighter weights, and I very clearly remember the trainer being like, no, get these ones. And the person responded, but I want those ones. And there was just more pushback to get the same as everyone else. And it made me really uncomfortable, because it takes a lot of courage for somebody to be able to either say out loud, I need it different, or B, to go and just think, I'm not going to make a fuss. I'll just go and get quietly the ones I know that I need, because who knows their body better? No one. You know your own body. That takes so much courage to do that. And then to have a trainer not say once, but twice, no, have those ones, you'll be fine. That's not what fitness is about.
Right.
That's not how that woman's going to come back to that class, because you've invalidated her experience, her lived experience, the way she feels her body. I spoke, like, this person is my friend now, the trainer, and a lovely person, one of my favorite people to work with. But it's that experience, that lived experience. And if you've never had a mental health challenge or known someone who's had a mental health battle, if you are not someone who's struggled with sensory overwhelm or anxiety, if you've never had an injury and needed to adapt something, if you've kind of been really lucky in life, that's great for you. It's great. I love that for you. But it doesn't mean other people don't need it to be different. And trainers, like that should be the thing that people or trainers know.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think that's what I think the biggest issue is trainers who have worked with the same type of person, not a lot of difference in the people that they've worked with. And having struggled with anxiety most of my life myself, like I always can find the anxious person or the people who want something different but don't really want to say anything. And it's just been so important. I used to work in corporate gyms, so I came across many different types of people, neurodivergent, neurotypical, but didn't really know what it was at the time. But just knowing, oh, this person just wants to do something different, and not taking offense to it as a trainer, because I also teach classes. I teach about 8 classes a week, and finding it's so funny. I think I accidentally found that I teach really well for neurodivergent people because I bring a whiteboard, partly for myself because I like to make sure that I'm on track, but also it's so good. People love to see what's coming up next and feel prepared. Because when you surprise someone with an exercise and they don't know what's coming, 9 times out of 10, they don't really like it. So making sure that you like have something that they can see and are prepared for, like they love that. But anyways, so finding those things and just really having, because I think when I was initially teaching classes and there would be people in a class who wouldn't tell me that they had an injury and they would just start doing a different exercise. And it used to bother me because I would think, well, what are you doing? Why are you coming to class if you're doing something that doesn't match with what we're doing? But like you said, they know their body best. And now I've been teaching for almost 10 years. And if someone comes into my class and is doing something different, I give them a thumbs up. I say, are you okay with that weight? They say, yeah. And we move on. And we just,
it's not a thing.
Exactly. Yeah. We move on from it. And I think that's a big piece of it is making people, like you said, feel good in their bodies. But I talk about it a lot here. Sticking to a routine, kind of like we mentioned at the top of the show, can be really challenging, especially when someone's neurodivergent. Have you found any like creative or different ways to help someone stick to a routine, either for yourself or for your clients? Like, what are you finding really helps someone stick with it?
I think, again, and this is probably going to highlight throughout our conversation, but everyone's different. And so you might find a very creative solution for client A, but client B, that's not going to work.
It's so true.
So I like the idea, and sort of what I do with my clients is we have a toolkit of resources, and it's not a real thing. It is a real thing, but it's a mental thing, and we'll discuss it. And mostly it's the main thing when it comes to needing to be able to adapt is that you can communicate well with your client, or they can communicate well with you. Because for someone, not being able to stick to a routine might just be a bit like me, that when they get to the gym, it's like, oh, this is boring. I just want to do something else. Let me go on the leg press instead of doing a deadlift. And actually, it's not the point. So there's that sort of routine where it is kind of a case of adapting maybe your exercises and finding ones that do work, or reminding yourself the bigger goal here is to get to this thing. But for someone else, their routine might be broken where actually they wake up and they are so mentally exhausted that they can't go to the gym. Because it's all of the little steps that someone needs to go through to actually get to the gym. It's not the gym itself. So what I do for those, and it's very simple. I make it as fail-safe as possible, because the main thing with my clients, they're not after big goals. We're not here to do unsustainable weight loss. We're not here to just train for a boxing competition and do it once and never do it again. Like, we are here to improve our health. And so it works like this. So I will say to them, we have an app. I use Everfit. I don't know if you've heard of Everfit over there. Yeah,
I've not heard of that one.
Oh, okay. So it's a bit like Trainer Eyes, or maybe other ones.
I use Trainer Eyes. Yeah.
Cool. Very similar. I prefer the interface of Everfit. So I use Everfit, but very similar. So we have like the DMs and the direct messaging with your coach. And if they're not feeling their session, they let me know. And I put everyone on there, regardless of whether they're on full coaching or not. It gives me a way to communicate with them and them to communicate with me that makes sense. But they'll send me a message. I always encourage it. Let me know if you can't do whatever it is that's on your schedule. And then it's trying to work out why. So I will know that client A can't come to the gym because it's all those little steps. So what we'll do is I'll say, well, what are you going to do today? You're going to make yourself a cup of tea or coffee. Because 9 times out of 10, most people in the UK especially are going to go make a cup of tea or have a cup of coffee. That usually involves waiting for something to heat up, boiling a kettle or pressing a button. But it takes, between a minute and 5 maybe here to make a drink, a hot drink. So what I'll say to them is, whilst that drink's boiling, do some stretching. That's all you need to do today. Because actually all it's about for me, and what I find my clients, is it's helping them feel positive about the fact that they can't go. Because actually they've listened to their body, and their body said, nah, not today. That's okay. Like, we
Yeah.
want that. That's exactly the same thing that you're saying, is like, if somebody's doing a different exercise, like, you know your body, so listen to it. And I'm not saying that this works every single day, because if it is every single day, then it's not going to progress you in a way that is what you want sustainably. But that would, to me, just flag that there's a bigger issue. I think people think that people who struggle with executive function, so the getting dressed, the having a shower, making food from scratch, all these things that most people can just do, think that that person is actually just lazy. And that is so not the case.
Mm-mm.
Nobody chooses to struggle to shower, and nobody chooses to struggle to get dressed or to brush their teeth. And so usually it's because their bodies say, no, not today. So we adapt. And then what you'll find is in the next day or 2 days after, they're like, right, I'm at the gym, let's go. And they don't feel negative. They feel really positive, because even though they missed 2 days, they didn't, because they did some stretching and actually they moved. And then they honored their own kind of dysregulated nervous system, or they honored their own pain and stress, and now they're ready. And being able to help a client learn that reframe is so powerful. And I think it helps, like, business owners going back to business as well, because even if you can just answer one email, put one post on, but then switch off, and actually switch off intentionally, like make that decision, then that's going to be better overall. And so it's not that creative maybe, but it's all, for me, it's all about this positive step forward as opposed to 5 steps back.
Yeah, I like that. And I think it's finding something that they can still do, right? Because I remember hearing from a couple different clients in the past, like, whether they had a chronic condition that prevented their bodies from doing something, or if it was a combination of neurodivergence with a chronic condition, because sometimes they go hand in hand. And a trainer, saying to them, well, if you can't do this, then we might as well not even do this session. Because that's the craziest thing that I think a trainer could say to someone, because you're about to demotivate them all the way out of the gym to never come back. So by supplementing, and I do the same thing. If someone is having a bad day, if they're sick or if they're just not feeling it, I say, great. Everyone gets a stretching routine put into their app, so that on a day when they just can't do it, they get a little bit of stretching. And I think that's so cool that you're saying that you do that too, because there's some consistency there. And it also says that stretching is enough. Stretching is a workout. You're moving your body in a way that is honoring to you and that feels good. And frankly, we all need to stretch, and we're probably not doing enough of it. And people feel good after they stretch. So I think that that's something that people, neurotypical and neurodivergent alike, can keep in mind, that if you can't make it to the gym, it's not the end of the world, as long as it's not consistent. Like you said, if it becomes, for a week straight and you're not going, then we have to talk about some things. But if there's one day and you just can't do it, stretching is enough. And I think reiterating that stretching is enough, going for a walk is enough, even if you're not in the gym lifting weights. Like, it doesn't need to be balls to the walls, 10 out of 10 every single day.
Yeah, the world's not going to end if you don't go pick up a kettlebell today.
Exactly. I love that.
And people, I think, do get, and personal trainers probably kind of make this a bigger point, that they get so like, oh, well, I'm disappointed that you can't do it. And you're right, like, that is not going to encourage people to feel good to come back. And it's, I get it online. I don't know whether you've seen, I get trolled a lot on the internet.
I know you do. I've seen it. I've seen all your posts about it. It's crazy. It's crazy,
It's
Rhiannon.
insane. So I'll do a video like demonstrating an exercise, and then someone will say to me, oh, well, you should actually do the exercise. And it's like, well, I do the exercise. And then I'll put a video on doing some stretching, saying that, I've come to the gym today and I just mentally, I'm struggling with overwhelm. So I'm going to do some yoga for half an hour. I'll film it, put it on a times 10, and it's a 20-second video. And they'll comment like, oh, you should be doing cardio. And it's like, that is not the point. And that's it. That is not the point. Like, the point is, people see people who maybe, quote unquote, don't look fit or look stereotypically like they go to a gym. And then people seem to forget that change doesn't happen overnight. It's a process. They also seem to think that someone's fitness journey must be about weight loss or must be about weight. And that is so not the case. Like, there are so many reasons why somebody might join a gym, and losing weight can be a part of it. It doesn't have to be the main goal.
Right.
And I think, yeah, trainers are too much on this is your plan. If you want to hit a goal, this is how you do it. There are millions of ways to get to a goal. Millions.
Exactly. Yeah.
And yeah, I think when somebody comes in my gym, I have to do inductions. I'm changing a little bit here, but it makes sense. So we have a personal trainer wall. So we've all got a profile, like a poster, with a picture and our contact details on, a blurb, and we all write our own blurb. And obviously every trainer has their own expertise, but they also have their own vibe. And you need not only expertise to match, but you need vibe to match too. Otherwise, what is the point? Because you're not going to feel safe or comfortable. They're not going to enjoy working with you, and you're probably not going to see any progress at all. If not, you won't go, or that's if you go. So I do two types of inductions. One's where people book directly with me and they are sensory friendly and lovely. And then there are other ones where I'm on shift, somebody turns up and I just have to do it there and then. So two different ways. And they'll quite often ask about personal training. So there are some personal trainers I work with and they see that as their sales way in, and they will pitch their services. And it does not matter if this person is a 4-foot Asian woman and they are a 6-foot black bodybuilder with very different body types. It just doesn't matter. They're going to pitch it and they're going to get the client. I could have anybody and I will be like, okay, so it's really important that you're finding a personal trainer that's going to match what you want. And we go to the PT wall. I'm on the wall. And, and I can say, here's my profile if you want to have a look, but I'm showing the whole wall because actually I might not be the best one for them. They might not be the best one for me. And it's not to say that all personal trainers who are on the no pain, no gain, just push harder aren't going to be perfect. For some people, they will be, because there are some people who need that kind of heavier, harsher, militant kind of approach, and that's what they want from a PT. They want to be shouted at to push harder, probably because they won't push hard enough themselves, and they need that. But when you're neurodivergent, somebody says push harder and you're like, but I can't, and then you do, but then you actually get really injured or pained because you're pushing far too hard.
Yeah.
So
or you tend to avoid, because some people get avoidant when someone comes on too strong to them too.
Or the pressure. It's like so much is going on in that moment when somebody tells you to push harder. But I think there is probably a place for us all, so for our approach, and then for the militant, more push harder, and they count down from 5, and say 5, 10 times,
Right.
So there's definitely a place for them. But I wish that when you look at the education system of personal trainers, they get this knowledge. So the big bodybuilder and the small old woman who are having their sessions together, unfortunately, some personal trainers are going to talk to that older woman just like they talk to someone their own age, their peer, who's doing bodybuilding competitions. Actually, all they need to do is be able to be adaptable and to be flexible in their approach.
Yeah, 100%. And
I think a waffle. I'm so sorry.
Oh my gosh, no, I loved it. I think it fits in really well, because I think that is something that's lacking in training. And when you're doing your certifications and you're, starting to become a personal trainer. My path was a little bit different. I went to school for exercise science, for kinesiology, and then, branched off to corporate wellness and then to personal training from there. But a lot of us ended up in personal training, I would say. And, we learned a lot about different conditions of the body, different like heart conditions, lung conditions, all these different things. We learned how to teach a class. We learned how to structure personal training sessions, but there honestly should be a class or a section in whatever certification of just how to deal with people who are different, right? And I think I think it's coming up because, so I'm also certified through the American Council on Exercise, is my group exercise certification. And they now require, you have to do it's some kind of an inclusive training, mostly about like special education. So for someone who has Down syndrome or something like that. So being able to just work with people who are just different. And I think that that's a really great addition. I think we need more of it. I love that ACSM, my certifying body for being an exercise physiologist, they have all these options now of the autism exercise certificate. They have a cancer certificate that you can get. So it's really a little bit more in-depth knowledge of how to work with specific types of people, but also being just a people person and knowing how to work with people who just might think differently than you, whether you are a tall bodybuilding coach or you're, someone like us, and just being able to adapt. Because I think adaptability is really hard unless you have been in a situation and understand kind of what you're looking for. So yeah, I think
definitely.
Yeah.
And I think it's important to have these kind of I'm not going to get into the discussion on like certification bodies, but to have an extra thing that says you actually have that knowledge of how to apply something for a special population. Because Otherwise, you can just put it on your bio and use it as a tick box. So somebody searches you on Google and you pop up, but have you actually got that experience with that person? Or is it that if somebody wants personal training with you, you will then go and do a bit of research? Because it's very different.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So yeah,
I agree.
it's really great.
Yeah. And I think that kind of goes into a piece of it too. So I also work with people who are hypermobile, and I'm sure you've seen this. So there's a lot of overlap between people who are autistic, ADHD, who are also hypermobile. And then I also bring in the piece of having a chronic condition, because a lot of times there's an overlap. And, when we talk about hypermobility, and even when we talk about neurodivergence, a lot of times people are just unaware of, where their body is in space or how their body moves. So can you explain maybe a little bit of why body awareness feels a little bit more difficult, and in the same vein of that, why is it also harder for someone who's neurodivergent to recover after maybe a taxing workout?
Yeah, so I fully agree with the fact that hypermobility is a massive crossover. I've actually got some clients with, and I can never say this correct, I think it's Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, so
Yep.
EDS.
Yep. Yes. Yeah.
And I've had 2 clients with it diagnosed, and no one else has ever wanted to work with them because they've just not known or been too nervous of doing something wrong. And I
Interesting.
think I want to highlight to anybody listening who has hypermobility that you can absolutely do strength training safely, and it's probably one of the best things you can do to actually improve your awareness of where your body is and to not hyperextend. But yeah, so when it comes to supporting clients with that, this is where that no pain, no gain thing comes in really importantly, is because I am working a lot with these clients on actually stop, because they want to push more. And what that does is we know that your form starts to slip when you start trying to do heavier or push harder. And I'm not even talking about working to a point of progressive overload. I'm talking about, I will have clients that will do a lat pull down and just keep pulling because they
Yeah.
are not their brain isn't quite registering that they're at that place, and their muscles are just going to keep letting their body go because they're not actually supporting them in the same way that ours do.
Yep.
I had my first client that I had with EDS, and I still have them. They're on a break and they won't mind me mentioning them. First session we do is like, and you probably do the same, it's almost an assessment on what movements they know, if they're comfortable doing exercise, and how you might need to be a trainer to them. And I always try and do body weight squats. It's a really quite a nice, safe beginner's movement. Most of us did it at school as well, so it's something we can kind of remember. And we really struggled. And the first one almost couldn't get back up again. And so we swapped them and we did some wall squats or sits as a variant just to see how that was. But that wasn't her trying to go low to the floor. That was because her muscles didn't stop her going down to the floor. And when we do cat-cow just to warm up, I tell her when to stop, arching through, because she is just going to keep going because her mind-muscle connection is not where ours is. And if it is, it's still not registering that that's your range of motion. And then it goes beyond that range of motion. She only knows it's gone beyond when she's in pain because something's actually popped out. And we've never got there. But that is the reality for someone who has these sort of things.
Yeah.
And so it's a very different way of strength training, and it's a challenge as a trainer. I'm sure you will know that.
Yeah.
Very challenging. And I have had times where I've sat there and my adaptation wasn't great. And the other option I had actually really wasn't great either. And I sit there for about 20 seconds and she's looking at me and I was like, right, scroll your phone for 2 minutes. Let me just think, because sometimes it's something completely different you need to try, but you have to get there. But I think when it comes to recovery and things, when you have a body that isn't typical, it's more exhausting, and not just physically, it's the mental aspect as well. And that comes into just neurodivergence as a whole, but also hypermobility and EDS, and just the fact that there is so much more stimulus going on or more things to consider when you're in a session that can be absolutely exhausting. And say if you have 2 sessions back to back, one on a Monday and one on a Tuesday, and you've got Ehlers-Danlos syndrome or something, and that first session you absolutely smashed, you really well, it's great, and actually you're getting stronger and it feels really good, but you go home and you are so exhausted because you've been in this mental overload for 50 minutes trying to do what you were doing, and actually you've smashed it and done really well. But that next session, what might happen is you come in and you try and do the same because you know you can do it. But because you're so exhausted from the day before, then you do actually get injured, or you do kind of just have that lapse of concentration on where your body is. And actually then you have to have a week off because you do get injured or something along those lines. And I think that when it comes to recovery, if you are not a typical body or a typical brain or anything like that, it's okay to take rest. I mean, it's okay to take rest. We know that anyway.
Right. Yeah.
But I'm talking about additional rest. There's no shame in it. And I think that is something you have to teach to people as well, is they think, right, I'm on this journey now. I'm going to come in, I'm going to do it all the time, which I want them to do, of course. But equally, like, it's like listening to their body again, or at least acknowledging when they have the potential to feel super exhausted the next day.
Right.
That's so important. And I have clients that sometimes they go stiff in a car. They do a long journey the one day, so 4 hours there, 4 hours back, and we then schedule a rest day for the next day. Not because they necessarily need it, but they do need
Yeah.
it, actually, and we know from experience they need it.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's hard.
And I
It's
think
hard
that
though.
it does help actually help people resonate in their bodies a little bit more when you have a situation like that, where if they're going to be sitting in a car for a long period of time, they might not realize it, but through talking about it and you saying, hey, maybe we take a rest day after, because that's going to be a lot. And I don't think you're going to want to move, maybe, or maybe your body isn't going to move in the best way right after that. I think that's a really great conversation, and also helps them be aware of what might be causing them to feel certain ways that they might not think of themselves, and even if, like you said, they're doing back-to-back days, there's things that we can do to modify that. Sometimes I'll show up at a client's house and they'll have had a really stressful week, and sometimes people hold stress in their bodies in different muscles,
Mm-hmm.
and they're just sore from the stress, which happens, and is
Yeah.
totally not abnormal. And so if I show up and they say, Abby, I don't know if I can lift anything today, I said, great. Well, then you get a stretch day and you get some, guided yoga. And that's,
Yeah.
we're going to do that instead. And it's,
And
again, taking it back to, this is what's going to feel good for your body. And usually, most of the times after that, after we do stretch, they feel significantly better. You're releasing that stress and tension. And it's really, it is just about being in tune with your body. And I think when we work with someone who's neurodivergent, we kind of get to hold their hand and help them find that thing that's going to feel best for their body when they might not necessarily know. And I think, a lot of time, whether it's through, burnout, or if the executive function is just super low that day, like, there's always the alternatives that we can offer. So I think I think that's a big piece of it that maybe people don't think of for themselves when they're like, why am I feeling so bad after a workout? I felt so good right after that. But I think it's something to keep in mind when they're neurodivergent.
yeah, I think it is about, as a trainer, giving someone permission
Mm-hmm.
to not have to do. And when you're neurodivergent, a lot of the time we do need somebody. Like, I went to a session the other day, my own coach for strongman stuff, and I sat outside and I messaged my partner. I was like, I'm borderline having a panic attack here. Like,
Yeah.
something had happened and I mentally was shutting down, and I was like, what do I do? And she was like, come home, because she knows me well enough to know that I need to come home, but I need that permission. And sometimes it is about, yeah, you turn up and you give that permission for that person to have a different day and do something different, and actually that's what they need, and then they learn that they can advocate for themselves as well.
Exactly.
And that then, like, improves their life across so many different aspects, because they can feel that they are able to say what they need.
It's very empowering, and especially maybe for someone who's been diagnosed later in life, they haven't had that empowerment and that confidence growing up because it was, labeled as something else. That's such a big thing. And what is one thing that you wish that every neurodivergent person knew about their body?
I just want people to know that it's okay to be different and to take up space in a different way, and that there is nothing inherently wrong with you needing something different or needing to adjust a movement because it doesn't work for you, or even just because it doesn't feel right. You don't even have to be able to explain why. But if something doesn't feel right, that's okay. Like, it's fine. Just do it differently. And yeah, just having this knowledge that no matter who you are, no matter what you look like, how you think, you deserve to take up space in the fitness world too. gyms are not just for skinny, stacked, built people. They are for everyday people who want to improve their health. And that's the most important thing that I wish everyone, neurodivergent or neurotypical, but just everyone could hear again and remember and like kind of take with them on their journey, is that, yeah, they deserve to take up space too.
Yeah. And if a trainer or a gym makes you feel otherwise, it's time to look for a different gym or a different trainer. And that's okay too.
Yeah.
You have permission.
Hmm.
We are giving you
Yeah.
permission to find something that is going to work for you. You don't have to stay stuck in something that doesn't make you feel good.
Yeah. And if you hate it, if you hate a gym, don't go to a gym. And like you say, you go to clients' houses. There are PTs here, and I will go to clients' houses. Like, there are other options. And it's okay if your option isn't what everyone else is doing.
Yeah.
Do it for you.
Exactly. I love that. All right. One last thing. The end of my show, one of my favorite things is absolution. So this is the time where, we talk about how the fitness industry can be toxic at times. You and I are both PTs. We can fully admit that. And, it is what it is in the fitness industry.
Hmm.
But what is something that you think that we can absolve ourselves of the guilt and shame of?
So I think that it is using just weight as a metric to measure somebody's success. And we've touched on this. There are so many things that can be markers of success. And not all of them need you to have a medical degree either. We're not talking blood work. We're talking, it could be measurements. It could be how many hours of sleep you get a night. Like, if you move your body more and you are getting fresh air and you are enjoying kind of building strength and things, then you're probably going to sleep better that day because actually you've had a better day, which can impact your life in so many ways. And I think that when it comes to looking at numbers, because we do like numbers to see progress, they're nice to track and make a nice pretty graph. But too often, people and the fitness industry will have that number be weight related. And I'm even talking not just body weight, but weights on a actual dumbbell. And it will
Yeah.
be that you're only progressing if that dumbbell's getting heavier. And that's just not true. And I think if we can assign numbers to feeling, how you feel, do you feel good? Do you feel strong? Then that is going to be so much more powerful because it means more. And so, yeah, that's the thing I would absolve, is just having it as numbers that show an increase or decrease depending on what you want. But,
Yeah, I really like that. And it's so funny because so we're at the start of the new year and I check in with my clients for their goals for the year. And I had 2 clients this year who, who previously had wanted to kind of see the number on the scale change. And, there are things that you can do, changing, ways of eating, things like that, to see the number change. However, I don't put all stock in that, right? I think it's a good data point. I love data. But funny enough, in the new year, I said, all right, where are we at with, how you want to track, things like that. And 2 of them said, I think I want to focus more on, one of them said getting stronger. One of them said, I want to focus on how I'm feeling. And in my head, it was like a celebration because I was like, this is so great.
mm-hmm.
It's such a great change. And again, you can feel the difference in how your clothes fit, if that's something that you're looking for,
Yeah.
or even just your energy levels or feeling stronger, not being in pain as you're, trying to do certain things. So I really like that one. I think it's important for people to remember, especially as we start a new year when a lot of people want to see a number on a scale change. But there are so many more data points outside of that we can focus on that. And, I always tell people the number on the scale does not tell the whole picture, right? Depending on if you had salt the day before, depending on how much water you
Mm-hmm.
drank, like it is just, you really never know. So I like that. Thank you for
Yeah.
sharing that, Rhiannon. That's wonderful.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me
Of
today.
course. And now, okay, everyone, I'm going to recommend that you follow Rhiannon on her social media. She's doing a lot of really great things and she's getting out there. And before I hit record, we were talking, Rhiannon's only had her business for a year and she's doing some really phenomenal work. So Rhiannon, if people want to follow you on social media, where can they find you?
The kind of best place at the moment is probably Instagram, if you want social media stuff. So that would be, and I'm sure you put this in the show notes anyway, but it's Rhiannon Cooper PT, all one word, and it's very pink, so you'll know it's the right place. And then my website is notsotypicalfitness.co.uk. And the way my ADHD is, I'm always making new resources and new blogs and things. So I've created like a hub of free stuff, which can be really helpful. When you talk about how you're feeling, I have guides on there that will help somebody who isn't ready for professional support, but will help them to start to like check in with themselves and see how they are feeling. And if somebody is wanting to like start a fitness journey and just doesn't know how to begin, then I would highly recommend checking out the resources on the website, because I think that they will be helpful. And I made them for a purpose, which is to help people.
I love it. And yeah, you're doing really wonderful work, and it's work that's so important and is so needed in the fitness industry. So thank you for sharing all of that. And thank you for sharing your own personal experience with us today. I hope it resonates with someone here, and that they can move forward in confidence and feel empowered to take a next step if that's the push that they needed.
Thanks so much for having me, Abby.
Absolutely. And thank you all so much for stopping by. I look forward to seeing you on the next episode of Talk Your Abs Off.